Advocatus Diaboli is a position in the Congregation for the Causes of Saints at the Vatican, who performs in an adversarial process the role as the defender of the faith, ironically, to impeach the candidates for beatification and canonization, or subject those who would be saints to the trials by fire found during the witch trials, but dating back to Hammurabi's Code. And most often you shall hear someone, at least in pretext, proffer as their defense that they are only playing the devil's advocate, the literal translation from the Latin for Advocatus Diaboli. But fans of Hollywood films no doubt may recall that the year 1997 was a year for films about exciting lives of attorneys in litigation, with films like Francis Ford Coppola's film adaptation of John Grisham's The Rainmaker, starring Matt Damon, Danny DeVito, John Voight, and Mickey Rourke, opening nationwide in theaters just as many legal aspirants were getting into the grinding routine of being a first-year law student, learning how to brief cases, endure the Socratic method, joining study groups and assigning fellow class members to specific topics for a course outline. But in October 1997, the premiere for a Grisham-styled attorney film with an A-list cast that had included Al Pacino, Keanu Reeves, and Charlize Theron, but also with appearances of other headliners like Craig T. Nelson, David Spade, Helen Mirren, and Delroy Lindo, and even Jeffrey Jones, who some may remember as Ed Rooney, the principal and nemesis of Ferris Bueller, and who in 2020 had been sentenced to 3 years of probation for failure to update his sex offender registry information after a 2003 plea of nolo contendere, a familiar legal term in Northern Virginia, especially for Jim Moran fans and those who recall his nolo contendere dealer successor, Don Byers' former advertising pitches, to a charge of employing a 14-year-old boy to pose for nude pictures, was at the Regency Village Theater in sunny Los Angeles, City of Angels, California. And in the fall of 1997, some 40 to 44,000 matriculating students each year, but distinguishable from most, at a Tier 1 or Tier 14 law school, in the top 14th of all law schools in the nation, where the competition is just as fierce to be admitted as it is to remain at the top of the top in expectation of high-paying attorney jobs in the best of the very best law firms. So there also was I. Some dare say the vast majority of people in a Darwinian natural selection tend to be risk-averse, try their best to avoid confrontation, and for the most part are suited more towards those pleasures and endeavors that are amenable to a lifestyle that is far less dramatic and far more convenient, like voting. And for one reason or another, they tend to be few and far between, dare say rare, at a Tier 1 law school. But according to an article in Above the Law that appeared in May 2010, those who successfully graduate in the top 40% from these law schools, which they describe as equivalent to the top 5% in a Tier 4 law school. Some say there are Tier 1 law schools and then the rest, but they're actually Tiers 1 through 4, may expect the award of a job like senior legal counsel at a major corporation. But even there, it is not all work and no play. And if there was one film that every first-year law student wanted to see in the fall of 1997, it was The Rainmaker, Rudy Bailey, which did not even make the American Bar Association's top 25 list of greatest legal movies of all time, scoring even below Miracle on 34th Street. Who thinks of that as a legal film? Or the John Travolta film that premiered in theaters the following year, A Civil Action, most of which, as might be expected on a list selected by the ABA, present a positive view of the legal profession. Who would not wish to be an Aaron Brockovich, a Lieutenant Danny Caffey, or an Atticus Finch, or even Denzel Washington in his role as an attorney in the film about AIDS, Philadelphia. Break it down to me like I'm a 5-year-old, right? Good public relations. But one criticism of the devil's advocate presented by one attorney online in 2018 as to why it failed to make the top 25 list was its lack of realism. Not so much to the extent that it may be rare for the supernatural to present in a large midtown Manhattan or Wall Street firm, but like a firm at which a highly talented recent law school graduate like Rudy Bella would not be stuck in, working for a character like Bruiser. No prestigious white shoe law firm like Milton Chadwick Walters would ever hire a small-town attorney like Kevin Lomax, no matter how good a sole practitioner in Gainesville, Georgia, and then fast-track him immediately to the status of partner as soon as he had arrived. It strains credulity and simply does not happen, but makes for good movie watching for those pursuing an unrealistic dream. But still, that was the film most recommended by my childhood protege, legendary criminal defense and civil rights attorney, Raymond Brown, when I was in my first year of law school, which he acclaimed was about a firm with which we both had some familiarity, the Paul Lewis firm that had represented the Attica inmate in the case of Fareed v. Smith, the firm referenced in the last installment for this video series. And that brings us to one of the next cases in the Empire State to raise both the topic of a sincerely held faith belief and again finding an incarcerated inmate in a correctional facility, presenting a claim of a violation of his rights under the Free Exercise Clause, that substantive right not even specifically mentioned in the pleadings presented to the court in the unartful pleadings, ironically, by Fareed's attorney at the Powerhouse Law Firm, compelling the court, therefore, in the furtherance of achieving justice and inherent powers, to apply a liberal construction to his pleadings and frame it in some legally recognizable or cognizable argument before granting a summary judgment against him. Decided 16 years after the decision in Fareed v. Smith, a case presented by a pro se litigant unrepresented by any attorneys, much less a high-powered midtown law firm, Robert Cardew versus the New York State Department of Correctional Services, was brought to the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York, not by a prisoner bringing a claim that a deck of tarot cards and books on the topic were his newfound religion, nor a claim of a newly ordained minister of Islam like the prize fighter, world-renowned Cassius Clay, but a Jehovah's Witness, just like Leroy Hall in that first case to challenge the trespass statute in the Commonwealth of Virginia that had only 15 years before been converted to a crime by the legislature from a civil action in tort, joining as many as 24 other states that had done the same at around the same time, and all with some complaints about the proselying pressures of Jehovah's Witnesses. But like professionally prepared pleadings by the distinguished firm of Paul Weiss in the matter brought by Mujahid Fareed, had attempted the court to take judicial notice at the outset that it had appeared that an unidentified person had been attempting to test the contraband policy at the Attica Correctional Facility, an unindicted co-conspirator. There is one apparently extraneous detail referenced by the court in the Cardew case. As the court notes near the outset, citing to paragraph 49 in his complaint, plaintiff then had to seek assistance from Sergeant Brickle because defendant Stiglich provoked a confrontation with plaintiff in order to force plaintiff to pledge allegiance to the Jehovah's Witness religion. Let's repeat that once more, because of the facts are analogous to and not reasonably distinguishable from potential plaintiffs who may decide to challenge the policy instituted by the Conway Regional Health System in Arkansas, requiring that just 5% of employees seeking a religious exemption from the vaccine's mandate swear off a list of 30 common medications that it has identified as involving the use of fetal cell lines in the development and testing, just like in the COVID-19 vaccines. It sounds right there already like being treated discriminatorily in disparate treatment vis-a-vis similarly situated others. Plaintiff then had to seek assistance from Sergeant Brickle because defendant Stiglitz provoked a confrontation with the plaintiff in order to force plaintiff to pledge allegiance to the Jehovah's Witnesses religion. Now, of course, those familiar with constitutional law and religion and the Pledge of Allegiance are familiar with the fact that this was the very, very issue that was brought by Jehovah's Witnesses in challenge to being required to stand for the national anthem or recite the Pledge of Allegiance in public school. First, for review, what did we learn about the free exercise clause during the litigation brought by the prize fighter Cassius Clay in his legal attempts to avoid a draft into the military during the conflict in Southeast Asia? The Supreme Court said, with Justice Thurgood Marshall, the only African-American justice on the court, recusing himself from the decision, if only for the appearance of impropriety. In applying these tests, the court said, the selective service system must be concerned with the registrant as an individual, not with its own interpretation of the dogma of the religious sect, if any, to which he may belong. So immediately, in this case, we find the correctional facility overreaching the bounds constitutionally that had been set by the United States Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, in the Cassius Clay decision in 1971, not considering this individual inmate, expressed by individuality, but demanding an oath of allegiance from him to a general dogma associated with a particular religious sect to which he had claimed that he belonged, attempting to treat him in the court as a group, which Niebuhr reminds us are less moral than individuals, and not as an individual, such as are guaranteed individual rights of free exercise under the First Amendment. A clear misapplication of law in derogation of rights. But let's, in the next installment, delve further into the facts presented in this religious liberty case. The first liberties guaranteed to citizens in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, guaranteed liberties that we have found several courts attempting to define and circumscribe, very distinct from the treatment of courts for a general right that is claimed for a woman's choice in reproductive decisions under the Supreme Court in Roe v. Wade. But I digress. And as Paul writes in his epistle to early churches at Ephesus, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. To those in faith, then, therefore, behold, for you are sent forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore as wise as serpents, and yet harmless as doves. And I charge thee therefore in season and out of season, reprove, rebuke, exhort with all longsuffering and doctrine. For a time has come when they will not and do not endure sound doctrine, but after their own lusts do they keep to themselves teachers, having itching ears. And they turn away their ears from the truth, and are turned unto mere fables. But once thou in all things endure afflictions, do the work of an evangelist, make full proof of thy ministry individually. Live long and prosper, Star Voyagers. This briefing is unclassified. As you were, my name is Major Mike Webb, and by God, I am running for Arlington Public School Board. Let's keep Mike Webb away from our schools. Honest. Carry on. This advertisement was authorized by Mike Webb.
I used to be a Power Ranger in a former life.
Thunk, I could have had a vaccine.